project is the Keynote speech. For this, Keith is going to pretend we are all at a financial convention. His job is to get you in the mood for the rest of the convention. You are all sitting around in a big conference room at a big hotel in a big city. It is morning. You have had breakfast and your choice beverage to get you going. I am the MC for the morning session. I've already welcomed you and let you know what you're about to hear from our keynote speaker. Keith Horowitz comes to us from Colorado Springs. He has spent a total of more than 20 years in the financial section, primarily as a computer programmer. He is known for his extensive work and presentations for both international activity of geocaching and as a leading speaker and leader in the Toastmasters organization. He wanted me to let you know the title of his presentation is Superhereos. Please welcome Keith Horowitz. Great title, sir.
Keith, real quick, get green light at 15, and then what do you want on the other?
Perfect, I like it.
5
15,
minutes?
yeah. Hello, what a great convention we have here. This turnout is amazing. I'm trapped. Who will save me? Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's
Superman.
Superman. Yes, I can tell. Most of you have probably heard that version of it before. It comes from the old TV version of Superman. Yeah, we've had Superman over and over again, coming from the comics to the small screen, to the big screen, back to the small screen again. So everybody here has heard of Superman, right? Yeah. When Superman was not out fighting crime, he was trying to fit in, acting like an everyday man. Who remembers his career? Shout it out.
Newspaper reporter.
Newspaper reporter. Right, exactly. A newspaper reporter. Well, when you think about it, these days, a newspaper reporter, really? Is that the best he could do? Is that supposed to be the most undercover for that profession of being a superhero? Well, I thought about it. Because when you think about where Superman came from, when he came from, back in the 1930s, there weren't a lot of radios. There wasn't a huge amount of electronic communication. Phones were still a bit of a premium device. We didn't have TVs. If you wanted to see what was going on around the world in news, you had to go on the weekend to the movie theater and they would show a newsreel that had been around, and that news could easily be a week or 2 weeks out of date. So Superman, yeah, he's got his super hearing, he's got a super speed, but there's a lot of stuff to keep track of when you think about for Superman. Lots of potential bad stuff going on around the world. How is he going to keep track of it? Where can he keep an eye on what's going on in the world, keep an eye on the pulse of the world without having to constantly fly around? News collected at a newspaper agency. It's actually kind of brilliant when you think about it. He's there sitting in the office and the news tickers in as it's happening. And he'll know if he needs to run right out and help out right away. Now, he really couldn't keep up with all those different things, but that really helped him out. But if you think about it, if he were around today, I'm not sure it would actually be in a newspaper office. He'd want to be on the pulse of what's happening today. So I think he might actually be a mild-mannered NSA agent. Ooh, wait a second, is he a good guy or a bad guy then? Now, I remember watching the black and white version of Superman on TV, on reruns by that point. But he didn't really connect with me as much as some of the other superheroes. Now, there was another superhero that was on in the afternoon. I'd go over to my friend's house and we'd visit. And he'd want to watch a superhero show about Batman Batman, biff, pow, wow. But he was always fighting all these dark bad guys. And I don't know, that didn't quite agree with me. I'd rather watch Mr. Rogers than watch Batman. And we had arguments about that. But then there was a superhero, but not quite your normal superhero, a new type of hero that we both agreed upon. That was Steve Austin, the $6 million man, an early cyborg. Yet he didn't look like a cyborg. Normally he looked like a normal human man just fighting for goodness and against occasional bad guys, but it wasn't always about facing bad guys. It was just facing life's challenges and just having a little bit extra he could use to be able to get over those different situations that faced him. My friend and I used to love making our own home movies on an 8mm camera about us trying to be the $6 million man in slow motion and do. Well, those days, it was pretty easy to tell the good guys from the bad guys. You knew who was the bad guy. You knew who was the good guy. They were the hero. And the bad guy, they were always evil and easy to tell. Yet these days, it's a little harder to tell who the good guys and the bad guys are. You know, you have somebody, well, I don't know how many people here remember, he was famous on the East Coast for a while for selling very good priced electronic equipment. His name was Crazy Eddie. Crazy Eddie's prices were insane. Well, it turned out his stock prices were insane because he was artificially inflating them. He eventually got indicted, ran off to Israel, and eventually came back and had to serve time. And these days we hear about Ponzi schemes and multi-level marketing, and even some of the big banks overextend and wind up leaving us in trouble. There's some bad things going on in financial industries. But I think it's not all bad, and I think most of us here have a very good heart with the finances. But finance hasn't been around forever. You think about the caveman. He didn't have a pocket full of money. He wanted something. He went out and took it. Of course, occasionally he might have to pay for it, because if he took it from the caveman that was bigger down the street, that caveman might pound him. But then we had barter. We'd offer to trade something. You go over to the other caveman and say, "Here, how about this rock for that stick?" And that worked okay for a while. But what happens when you had a more complex transaction? You had something that your neighbor Eric wanted, but Eric didn't want anything that the other guy wanted. He wanted something else, so you needed to figure out a three-way barter transaction, and it starts getting complex. And some smart guy had this idea of artificial value with something that represents the value of the amount that you want to barter. And you can go over and say, well, here's this stick. Would you be willing to give me 2 of those pieces of paper? Those paper aren't worth anything by themselves, but they represent the value of the stick. And then you can go to the guy who has the rocks, and then the guy with the rocks can give me some nails so I can start building my house. And then finance was born. Now, when you think about it, those artificial numbers for people, numbers are always solid, right? We all agree a number is always a number, right? Well, I want to go through a little bit of number history. What's this?
No, X.
X. And we can all agree X is just a letter of the alphabet. Or is it? To the Romans, this was 10. They didn't have 0, but they had 10 with one character, the X. That meant 10, all fingers. Might be 10 horses, might be a distance of 10 leagues. It's 10. And then we have grade schoolers. And we come in and we show them this and we tell them, well, yeah, this is the letter X, but you know what else this means? This means times or multiplication. You're going to multiply with this. You know, like the biblical saying, go forth and multiply. Oh, look, I'm already fourth in line. How did that happen? Oh, now multiplying numbers. You're going to multiply numbers. And then a few more years go by and you get to high school or college, and they say, wait a second, no, this isn't multiplication anymore. If we want to multiply, we just don't write anything. Instead, x is now a variable. X equals 1, x equals 25, x equals y times 3. All of a sudden, this thing that represents a number isn't a number anymore. It's a variable. It could mean any different types of numbers. It could also represent a person you're no longer in a relationship with, an ex-person, an ex-in-law, an ex-wife, an ex-husband. Well, sometimes having an ex-wife or an ex-husband can be a problem. Help! I'm trapped! I told you about that before. The person who was trapped is my now wife. Shortly before we started dating, she had a bad situation. Finances were her enemy. She didn't have the cash flow that she thought she would. She had an ex-husband who stopped giving her money. She had a house that she was talked into with zero money down. And she didn't have enough money to be able to pay those bills. She got that with every intention of paying for that house. She did it because she wanted a good space for her daughters to live. But she wound up in a situation where she couldn't afford it anymore. And there was no relief except that word that can sound very ugly, bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is one of those things that we don't want to have to talk about. Bankruptcy means that somebody is left holding the bag. But it doesn't mean holding all the bag, because it means that we're doing our best to try and deal with it. Now, maybe there are some people who take advantage of bankruptcy and just use it as an escape because they weren't trying to do the right thing. But too many people are forced into bankruptcy, not because of bad planning, but because of bad situations. Situations beyond their control. And bankruptcy at least gives us a legal way to give them an escape from that burden. Now, there have been lots of times that people have been left holding the bag. That doesn't make sense. I'm sure everybody remembers the dot-coms failing and turning into the dot-bombs. The market collapsed for technology for a while. And then the market for mortgages collapsed. Some companies are better at being ready for that than others. If we take a good look and we're responsible as financial people, we're going to do better with that. Now, there are all sorts of crazy words that go along with the financial industry. You've got things like capital markets, accelerated dividends, cash flow, debt equity. Oh, and one of my favorites, cost of goods sold. You know, I think that was my kryptonite for a while in accounting class. That one took me the longest time to figure out. Cost of goods sold. What in the world does that mean? You have to take from over here and calculate this and then put it in with that? It basically means if it costs you $5 to make something and you can sell it for $7, you got a $2 thing, but you still have to make sure that your cost of goods, your $5, is accounted for. You can't figure out your net from your gross without the cost of goods sold. And the interesting thing is cost of goods sold can change over time depending on how much you have in stock and whether or not you need to depreciate. And depreciation, there's an interesting one. All different ways of doing depreciation, accelerated depreciation, and extended depreciation, all those different things. Now, as finances, maybe some of the people in the world look at people who do finances as being a little boring, a little bit too down the middle. But it's important that we're here dealing with finances. Because without finances, society as we know it now wouldn't work. We couldn't do the kind of stuff we do today just with bartering. we need to be able to handle the financial processes properly. We do that with computers and technology. I mean, everybody here deals with finances, even if you're not in the financial industry. I mean, think about your wallet filled with plastic, connecting you to your favorite bank or sets of banks. This is what connects us all. But it all has to be managed. And it isn't just managed by some nameless computer in the sky. It's managed by real people. And real people have to do a real job. And one of the types of things that we have to do is make sure that we're dealing with money properly through different financial planning. Financial planning could include things like retirements, mortgages, insurance. These are all things that connect us in our society. We think it's the telephone, we think it's the internet that connects us, but really it's our finances. Our society is built on solid finances. It's built on the financial system. And the people who run it, and run it well, and run it honestly, are the ones who make our society work. These are our heroes. Sitting here in this room right now are the superheroes of our society. You each have a moral obligation to keep our finances running well, keep it running honestly, and make sure it's working so that everyone who needs the money, who needs to count on being able to have a mortgage, to be able to get that loan for that next car, to be able to be part of the working society and not just be a drain on society, needs the financial institutions and needs the people who run it well to make sure that they are giving the best, strongest way, the superhero way of giving the finances. Now, you are all here to share your knowledge, to recognize the best of our industry, to recognize the best people, to learn more about what's going on in the financial market. Yes, sometimes politics can play a little bit of heyday with our different financial systems, but having you here, knowing that your job is important, knowing that what you're learning today and going to do in your different sessions going out from this are important. You are the superheroes. You are the people who are going to fly us up in the sky. Airplanes don't work without finance. Helicopters don't work with finance. We need the people in this room to know that they are the superheroes of society today. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, sir. Well, Keith, I'm looking forward to the time where I can give a speech that long, that kind of content, without actually reading my notes.